Walsh as they reviewed the strategic implications. "Good," the Admiral replied. "Maybe now we ca." Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and stared at the view screen. What he saw made no sense. The stars were gone. Not hidden by clouds or dust, but simply not there anymore. Where millions of points of light should have filled the darkness, there was only black. "Sir, you need to see this," called out Lieutenant Danny Cooper from his station. His voice shook as he spoke. "The sensors are picking up something big, really big." Jake walked over to Danny's console and looked at the readings. The numbers were wrong. They had to be wrong. According to the sensors, there were objects out. They're the size of small moons, hundreds of them. "Maybe thousands. Run a full diagnostic on the sensor array," Jake ordered. "Check everything twice." "Already did, sir. 3 times. The readings are correct." The New Horizon was humanity's most advanced exploration ship. It had been built to find new worlds for human colonies. Jake and his crew of 45 had been mapping star systems beyond human space for 2 years. They were supposed to be alone out here. The nearest human settlement was 3 months away. "Contact Earth immediately," Jake said. "Send everything we have? All sensor data, our exact position, everything." Before Danny could respond, the view screen changed. Light began to appear in the darkness. Not the gentle light of stars, but harsh white beams that cut through space like searchlights. The beams were coming from the massive objects that surrounded them. Then Jake saw the ships. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. The smallest ones were the size of Earth's largest cities. The biggest ones stretched for hundreds of miles. Their hulls were dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols glowed along their sides in colors that hurt to look at. "Sir, we're being scanned," Danny reported. "Multiple energy signatures hitting our hull." "Shields up. I'll stop. Do not make any aggressive moves." Jake knew his ship was no match for even the smallest vessel out there. The New Horizon carried basic defensive systems, but they were designed to handle space debris and small asteroids. These ships could probably destroy his vessel with a thought. A new sound filled the bridge. It was low and deep, like the rumble of thunder that went on forever. The sound came from the speakers, but also seemed to come from the walls themselves. "They're trying to communicate," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. "The signal is coming through on all frequencies at once." "Can you clean it up?" "Working on it, sir." The sound changed. The rumble became words, but they were spoken in a language no human had ever heard. The words were harsh and sharp, like metal scraping against stone. Then, without warning, the alien voice switched to perfect English. "Human vessel, you will prepare to receive a delegation. Any attempt to flee or resist will result in your immediate destruction." Jake felt his mouth go dry. He looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. Some looked scared, others looked confused. All of them looked to him for answers he did not have. "Prepare the main docking bay," he said finally. "Clear everyone out except essential personnel. I want security teams standing by, but keep their weapons powered down." 20 minutes later, Jake stood in the docking bay with 4 of his senior officers. They watched as a small craft approached their ship. The alien vessel was smooth and round like a metal egg. It made no sound as it landed. A door opened in the side of the craft. No ramp extended. Instead, 3 figures simply floated out and drifted down to the deck. They moved as if gravity meant nothing to them. The aliens were tall and thin, almost like walking skeletons covered in pale gray skin. Their heads were too large for their bodies, and their eyes were solid black, with no visible pupils. They wore no clothing, but their skin was covered in the same glowing symbols that marked their ships. The middle alien stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice came from speakers built into the walls of the docking bay. Its mouth never moved. "I am Speaker Kethvox of the Hegemony. You will listen and you will understand. Your species has been discovered. Your expansion into space has been noted. Your time of independence has ended." Jake forced himself to speak calmly. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship New Horizon. We're explorers, we mean no harm to anyone. Harm is not relevant. Your intentions are not relevant. Only compliance matters. The alien's black eyes seemed to look right through him. Your species will receive terms of surrender. These terms are not negotiable. Surrender? We're not at war with anyone. War is not required for surrender. Your species lacks the strength to resist, therefore resistance is illogical. The speaker raised one long, thin arm. A section of the docking bay wall lit up with images. Jake saw Earth from space, beautiful and blue. Then he saw the human colonies on 3 distant worlds. He saw ships, stations, and settlements that represented everything humanity had built among the stars. Your primary world contains 12 billion individuals. Your off-world colonies contain 2 million more. Your military possesses approximately 800 combat vessels, none of which exceed 300 meters in length. Your most powerful weapons operate at energy levels we consider suitable for mining equipment. The images changed. Now Jake saw the alien fleet in all its terrible glory. Ship after ship after ship, stretching into the distance like a metal ocean. There were thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands. The hegemony controls 47 species across this galaxy. We have maintained order for 10,000 of your years. We have the strength to destroy your species completely within 7 of your days. We offer an alternative. What alternative? Submission. Your species will accept hegemony oversight. Your military will be disbanded. Your weapons will be surrendered. Your off-world colonies will be evacuated and the worlds returned to approved species. Your people will serve in whatever capacity the hegemony requires. Jake felt anger building in his chest. You're talking about slavery. We are talking about survival. Many species have chosen poorly. They no longer exist. Your species will choose wisely, the alien gestured again. The wall showed new images. Worlds that had been burned to glass. Empty space where solar systems used to be. Entire species reduced to nothing but dust and memory. Your leaders will receive full terms within 1 of your hours. They will have 72 hours to respond with complete acceptance. Any delay will be considered refusal. Any negotiation will be considered refusal. Any resistance will be considered refusal. And if we refuse? Then your species will join the others we have been forced to remove from the galaxy. Your worlds will be cleansed, your ships will be destroyed. Your colonies will be eliminated. Within 1 standard month, no trace of humanity will remain anywhere in space. The speaker turned to go, then stopped. You have built much in a short time. Your species shows promise as laborers and technicians. It would be wasteful to destroy. You choose survival. The 3 aliens floated back into their ship without another word. The craft lifted off and disappeared into the darkness between the massive vessels that surrounded the new horizon. Jake stood in the empty docking bay for a long time after they left. His officers waited quietly behind him. Finally, Lieutenant Cooper spoke. "Sir, what do we do?" Jake turned around. His crew was looking at him with hope in their eyes. They expected him to have answers. They expected him to know how to fight ships the size of cities with weapons that could crack planets. "We go home," he said quietly. "We warn Earth, we tell. What's coming?" But even as he spoke the words, Jake knew it would not be enough. Humanity had 72 hours to decide between slavery and death. There had to be another choice. There had to be something the aliens had not considered. There had to be a third option, even if he could not see it yet. Admiral Lisa Carter received the message from the New Horizon while she was in a meeting about supply routes to the outer colonies. The words on her tablet screen made her stop talking mid-sentence. She read them twice before she could believe. What they said? "Clear the room," she said quietly. "Everyone out, now." Her staff officers looked confused but followed orders. When the door closed, Lisa called the one person who needed to know immediately. President Nathan Hayes answered on the first ring. "We have a problem," Lisa said. "A big one." 18 hours later, every world leader on Earth sat in the Global Defense Council chamber. The room had been built deep underground beneath Geneva. designed to survive anything short of a direct nuclear strike. Today, it felt more like a tomb than a meeting place. President Hayes stood at the center of the room. His face looked older than it had that morning. The weight of what he was about to say pressed down on him like a physical thing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are no longer alone in the universe. 3 hours ago, we received a formal communication from an organization that calls itself the Hegemony. They have given us 72 hours to surrender completely or face total destruction. The room erupted in voices. Some leaders shouted questions. Others argued that this had to be some kind of mistake. A few sat in stunned silence. Chancellor Helen Price of the European Federation was the first to speak clearly. How do we know this is real? It could be an elaborate hoax. Admiral Carter activated the wall screens. The images from the New Horizon filled the room, the massive alien ships, the gray beings with their black eyes, the demonstration of their power as they easily surrounded and controlled a human vessel. Captain Morrison and his crew are on their way back to Earth. They'll arrive in 16 hours. But we have independent confirmation from our deep space monitoring stations. There are alien ships positioned around our solar system, thousands of them. Prime Minister Carl Johnson of the Pacific Alliance leaned forward in his chair. What? Are there exact demands? Complete surrender? Disbanding of all military forces. Evacuation of our colonies. Acceptance of their rule over humanity, Admiral Carter paused. They call it survival. We would call it slavery, but we would survive, said Chancellor Price. Our species would continue to exist as servants, as property. This came from Colonel Ben Wright, who commanded the Mars Defense Forces. They're not offering us a treaty or alliance. They want us to kneel and stay kneeling. The debate went on for hours. Leaders argued about options that did not exist and solutions that would not work. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight no matter the cost. A few suggested trying to negotiate. Dr. Alan Rodriguez, Earth's leading expert on alien life, finally spoke up. We need to understand who we're dealing with. I've been studying their message patterns and communication methods. These beings think in ways that are completely alien to us. What do you mean? Asked President Hayes. They don't negotiate because they don't understand the concept. When they say their terms are non-negotiable, they mean it literally. In their minds, there are only two possibilities. We submit or we die. There is no middle ground. Then we're wasted our time talking, said Colonel Wright. If those are the only choices, then we fight. With what? Chancellor Price shot back. They have ships the size of cities. We have nothing that could even scratch their paint. During all this arguing, Maria Santos, the UN Secretary General, had been reading reports from the colonies. Now, she stood up and the room fell quiet. Maria was known for her calm voice and careful words. When she spoke, people listened. I've been in contact with our colonial governors. They want to know what we're going to tell the aliens. Governor Lisa Park on Kepler 442 says her people are ready to fight. Commander Amy Foster on Proxima Centauri sent the same message. So did Governor Kevin Nash on Volf 1061C. They're 3 months away from the nearest help, said Chancellor Price. They'll be destroyed before we could even send aid. They know that, Maria replied. They don't care. They say they'd rather die as free humans than live as alien slaves. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The colonies were willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for their principles. The question was whether Earth would do the same. President Hayes activated his communication system. Captain Morrison, are you receiving this? Jake's voice came through clearly from the New Horizon, now just 6 hours from Earth. Yes, sir. We're monitoring your discussion. What's your assessment of their military capabilities? They could destroy our entire fleet without breaking a sweat, sir. But there's something else. Something I noticed during the meeting. What is it? They don't understand us. The speaker kept talking about logic and efficiency. It was like he couldn't comprehend why we might choose to fight when we knew we'd lose. That concept seemed completely foreign to him. Dr. Alan Rodriguez nodded. That matches my analysis. They've conquered 47 species over 10,000 years. Every single one either submitted immediately or was destroyed quickly. They have no experience with prolonged resistance. Because it's illogical, added Dr. Sophie Bennett, a psychologist who specialized in group behavior. From their perspective, fighting when you know you'll lose is simply insane. They can't predict our responses because our responses don't make sense to them. Admiral Carter stood up. Then maybe that's our advantage. Not our weapons or our technology, but the fact that we're willing to do things they consider impossible. The debate continued, but something had changed. The focus shifted from whether they could win to whether they should fight. The question was no longer about military capability, but about human nature. With 12 hours left before the deadline, President Hayes called for a final vote. Not just from the leaders in the room, but from every human settlement in space. The colonies would vote first, since they faced the most immediate danger. The results came in quickly. Kepler 442 be voted to resist. Proxima Centauri be voted to resist. Volf 1061c voted to resist. Every space station, every mining outpost, every research facility voted the same way. Not a single human settlement chose surrender on Earth. The vote was closer, but the result was the same. Some nations hesitated. Some leaders argued for submission. But when the final count was finished, humanity had spoken with one voice. Admiral Carter was chosen to deliver the response. She stood in the main communication center as technicians prepared to broadcast on every frequency, from every transmitter to every corner of human space. This is Admiral Lisa Carter of Earth Defense Command, speaking for all humanity. We have received your ultimatum and we have considered your terms. She paused and looked around the room. Every person there knew they were about to sign their own death warrant. Every person there knew that their children and grandchildren might never be born because of what they were about to say. Our answer is no. The word went out across space at the speed of light. From Earth to the colonies, from the mining stations to the research outposts, humanity's response echoed through the void. It was not the answer the hegemony expected. It was not the logical choice. It was not the smart choice, but it was the human choice. Admiral Carter continued speaking, though she knew the aliens had already heard everything they needed to hear. We will not surrender our freedom. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not kneel to you or anyone else. We are humans, and humans do not bow to tyrants. When the transmission ended, the room was silent. Everyone knew what came next. The aliens would come with their massive ships and their terrible weapons. They would try to crush humanity like they had crushed so many others, but for the first time in human history, the entire species stood united. Not united in hope of victory, but united in refusal to accept defeat. They would fight not because they could win, but because fighting was who they were. In the darkness of space, the alien fleet began to move. 6 months after the war began, Dr. Sophie Bennett made a discovery that changed everything. She was working in a makeshift laboratory aboard the New Horizon, studying pieces of alien technology that had been recovered from destroyed ships. What she found was not better weapons or faster engines, but something far more important. "Jake, you need to see this," she called out to Captain Morrison, who was reviewing tactical reports in the next room. Jake entered the lab to find Sophie staring at a complex display showing alien technical specifications. The symbols and numbers meant nothing to him, but Sophie's expression told him this was important. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "The aliens' greatest weakness," Sophie replied. "Their technology is so advanced that it's become completely automated. Look at these control systems. Every ship, every weapon, every decision is made by computer programs that follow preset patterns. That doesn't sound like a weakness. It sounds efficient." "Efficient, yes, but also predictable. These programs haven't been updated in centuries, maybe thousands of years. The aliens have become so dependent on their technology that they've forgotten how to think creatively." Jake studied the display more carefully. "You're saying they can't adapt?" Not quickly, no. When we do something unexpected, their computers have to run millions of calculations to figure out how to respond. That takes time we can use. This discovery explained why human resistance had lasted so much longer than anyone expected. The aliens were not just fighting human weapons, they were fighting human unpredictability. Every time humans did something illogical, the alien computers had to start over from the beginning. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Williams was leading a dangerous mission deep into alien-controlled space. Her small ship had been modified with captured alien technology, allowing it to pass undetected through hegemony space. What she found there shocked her. "Admiral Carter, are you receiving this transmission?" Sarah's voice came through with heavy static. "We're here, Colonel. What's your status?" "I've made contact with a non-hegemony species. They call themselves the Aldari. Admiral, they've been hiding their true nature for over 3,000 years. Lisa felt her pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" "The hegemony doesn't just conquer species. They change them. Genetic modification, brain surgery, chemical treatments. They systematically remove the ability to resist or think independently. But the Aldari found ways to hide parts of their original nature. The implications were staggering. If the hegemony had been modifying conquered species for thousands of years, then most of their empire was held together not by force alone, but by biological control. Dr. Alan Rodriguez joined the conversation from his research station on Earth. "Colonel Williams, can you get biological samples from these Aldari? I need to understand exactly what the hegemony has been doing." "Already working on it, Doctor. But there's something else. The Aldari have been watching our war with great interest. They say they've never seen anything like human resistance before. Why? What makes us different? We're too new. The hegemony discovered us before they had time to study us properly. They don't know how to modify us yet. And our resistance is giving other species ideas." Back on Earth, Dr. Rodriguez worked day and night analyzing the genetic samples that Colonel Williams had managed to transmit. What he found made his blood run cold. "Admiral, I've completed my analysis of the Aldari samples," he reported during the next strategy meeting. "The genetic modifications are extensive. The hegemony has been breeding the fight out of their subject species for millennia." "What kind of modifications?" asked Admiral Carter. "Reduced aggression, increased compliance, suppressed curiosity. They've been turning entire species into perfect servants. But the process takes generations to complete." Jake Morrison leaned forward in his chair. "How long would it take them to do the same thing to humans?" "At least 50 years for the first generation of modifications. Maybe a century to completely break our spirit." "So they expected us to surrender because every other species surrendered?" "Exactly. They've never encountered a species that was both technologically advanced and genetically unmodified. We're fighting with the full range of human emotions and instincts that they've spent thousands of years breeding out of other species." This revelation spread quickly through the human resistance. For the first time since the war began, they understood why they were still alive. It was not just their weapons or their tactics that were keeping them in the fight. It was their essential humanity. The knowledge gave new purpose to their struggle. This was not just a war for human survival. It was a war for the right of all species to remain themselves. Colonel Williams continued her mission behind enemy lines, making contact with other hidden resistance groups. On the planet Theta Cygni, she found a species called the Keth, who had been pretending to be loyal servants while secretly maintaining their original culture. On Vega Prime, she discovered that the local population had been using illegal genetic therapy to partially reverse some of their modifications. "How many species are secretly resisting?" Admiral Carter asked during one of their communications. "More than the hegemony realizes," Sarah replied. "The Aldari think there might be resistance groups on dozens of worlds, maybe hundreds. But they've all been hiding because they thought they were alone." "What changed?" "Us, humanity, proved that resistance was possible. Word is spreading through the galaxy that somewhere someone said no to the hegemony and lived to tell about it." The war was entering a new phase. Humans were no longer fighting alone. Secret allies began providing intelligence about hegemony fleet movements and weak points in their defenses. Sabotage operations started occurring on worlds that had been considered completely loyal for centuries. On Kepler 442, the Governor Lisa Park received a message from an unexpected source. A group of modified aliens who had been assigned to oversee the colony's conquest had instead begun helping the human resistance. They call themselves the Reclaimed, she reported. Former soldiers from a dozen different species who have been secretly working to undo their modifications. They want to help us because we're fighting for something they lost long ago. The aliens were beginning to understand that they were not fighting a simple rebellion. They were facing the awakening of an entire galaxy that had forgotten what freedom meant. Dr. Sophie Bennett's psychological warfare campaign began in earnest. Using captured alien communication systems, she started broadcasting messages throughout hegemony space. The messages were simple but powerful. You don't have to obey. You don't have to serve. You can choose to be free. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Rebellions began breaking out on worlds that had been peaceful for centuries. The hegemony found itself fighting brushfires across their entire empire as long-suppressed instincts for freedom began to reassert themselves. But the most important change was happening within the hegemony leadership itself. For the first time in their collective memory, they were facing a problem they could not solve with overwhelming force. Speaker Kethvox, the same alien who had delivered the original ultimatum to humanity, stood before the Hegemony Council and tried to explain the impossible. The human resistance continues despite suffering massive casualties. Our projections indicated their surrender after the loss of their primary fleet. Instead, they have increased their resistance activities. Then increase the pressure, replied High Executors Renmech. Deploy additional fleets. Destroy their worlds completely. We have deployed additional fleets. We have destroyed their orbital installations and eliminated their formal military structures. Yet resistance continues from sources we cannot identify or predict. The Council fell silent. For 10,000 years, the formula had been simple. Demonstrate overwhelming power, offer surrender or death, then enforce the choice. It had never failed before. What do you recommend? Asked Srunmek finally. I do not know, Kethvox admitted. The humans operate outside our parameters of logical behavior. They sacrifice themselves for no measurable gain. They fight when fighting serves no purpose. They choose death over subjugation even when subjugation offers survival. For the first time in millennia, the hegemony was confused. And across the galaxy, other species were beginning to realize that confusion meant weakness, the impossible. War was becoming something even more impossible, a war the hegemony might not win. The first attack came exactly 72 hours after the ultimatum expired. Admiral Lisa Carter was on the bridge of her flagship Defiance when the alien ships opened fire. She had expected destruction. She had not expected it to be so beautiful. The alien weapons did not fire bullets or missiles. Instead, they bent space itself. Reality twisted and warped around their targets. Where human ships had been, there was suddenly nothing. Not debris or wreckage, just empty space where matter had been convinced it no longer existed. All ships. Scatter formation, Lisa ordered into her communicator. Do not group up, make them work for every target. The Defiance shook as one of the space-bending weapons missed them by a few hundred meters. Lisa watched her tactical display as red dots disappeared one by one. Each dot was a ship with hundreds of crew members. Each disappearance was hundreds of human lives snuffed out in an instant. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the New Horizon, reported Lieutenant Danny Cooper, who had transferred to the Defiance when Captain Morrison was promoted to Fleet Command. Put him through. Jake's voice came over the speakers, calm despite the chaos around them. Admiral, I'm reading massive energy buildup in the enemy fleet. I think they're preparing for a planetary bombardment. Lisa felt her blood turn cold. Earth's orbital defenses were already half destroyed. If the aliens could attack the planet directly, the war would be over in minutes instead of hours. All remaining ships converge on the alien flagship. We need to draw their attention away from Earth. "Ma'am, that's suicide," said Commander Tony Rodriguez, her tactical officer. "Everything we're doing is suicide, Commander. The question is whether we can make it meaningful suicide." The human fleet, what was left of it, charged directly at the largest alien vessel. It was like watching ants attack an elephant, but the ants had courage and the elephant had never seen anything so foolish. The alien ship was over 50 miles long and 10 miles wide. Its hull was covered in weapons that could destroy planets. Against it, the humans sent everything they had: fighters, destroyers, cruisers, and even converted cargo ships armed with whatever weapons they could carry. Lisa watched the battle unfold and realized something strange was happening. The aliens were winning, but they were not winning as easily as they should have been. Their massive ships were powerful but slow to react. Their weapons were devastating but took time to target and fire. "Ma'am, I'm detecting something odd," said Commander Rodriguez. "The enemy ships seem to be having trouble tracking our smaller vessels." "What do you mean?" "Their sensors are designed for large-scale warfare. Our fighters are so small compared to their usual targets that their systems keep losing track of them." Lisa smiled grimly. "Then we use every advantage we have, no matter how small. Order all remaining fighters to attack pattern random. No formations, no coordination. I want every pilot to be as unpredictable as possible." The human fighters swarmed around the alien ships like angry bees. They could not do much damage, but they could confuse and distract. For the first time since the war began, the aliens had to actually work to kill humans, but it was not enough. The Defiance took a direct hit from one of the space-bending weapons. The ship cracked in half, atmosphere rushing out into the void. Lisa found herself floating in space, her emergency suit the only thing between her and death. She expected to die there, alone in the darkness. Instead, she saw the familiar hull of the New Horizon approaching. A rescue shuttle launched from the exploration ship and pulled her to safety. "Good to see you again, Admiral," said Jake Morrison as she was brought aboard. "Though I wish it were under better circumstances." "Status report," Lisa said as soon as she could speak. "Earth's orbital defenses are gone. Most of our fleet is destroyed. The colonies are under attack. But we're still fighting." "How is that possible?" Jake led her to the bridge where Chief Engineer Ryan Clark was working at a modified console. The young engineer looked up from his work with a tired but determined expression. "We've been adapting, Admiral, improvising. The aliens have better technology, but they use it the same way every time. We've been studying their patterns and finding weaknesses." "What kind of weaknesses?" Ryan activated a display showing technical diagrams. "Their ships are incredibly advanced, but they're also incredibly complex. Every system is connected to every other system. If you know where to hit them, you can cause cascade failures." "You mean we can actually damage their ships?" "We can't destroy them," Ryan admitted. "But we can make them work harder than they expected. We can force them to use more resources, take more time, make more mistakes." Reports came in from the colonies. On Kepler 442b, Governor Lisa Park had turned the entire settlement into a fortress. The mining equipment had been converted into weapons. The underground tunnels had become a maze of defensive positions. When the aliens landed troops, they found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any logical military doctrine. Commander Amy Foster on Proxima Centauri B had done something even more extreme. She had evacuated the main settlement and scattered her people across the planet's surface. When the alien ships arrived, they found empty buildings and no targets. The humans had become ghosts, striking from hiding and disappearing before retaliation could come. "They're learning to fight like humans," Jake observed. "No rules, no honor, no logic. Just pure stubborn refusal to give up." The most remarkable report came from Volf 1061C. Governor Kevin Nash had done the impossible. He had actually forced an alien ship to retreat. Not by destroying it, but by making the cost of victory too high. "How?" Lisa asked when she heard the news. "He used the planet's magnetic field," Ryan explained. Volf 1061C has an unusually strong magnetic field. Nash figured out how to overload it using the colony's power systems. It created an electromagnetic pulse that scrambled the alien ship's electronics. And they retreated? They pulled back to recalculate their approach. For the first time in their history, they encountered a problem they couldn't solve immediately. It confused them. Lisa began to understand what was happening. The aliens were not just fighting human ships and weapons. They were fighting human nature itself. Every time they thought they had solved the problem of humanity, humans did something new and unexpected on Earth. General Tony Rodriguez had organized a resistance movement that defied every rule of military strategy. When alien forces landed to secure key cities, they found that humans did not retreat or surrender. Instead, they dug deeper, fought harder, and refused to accept defeat even when defeat was obvious. The aliens keep waiting for us to act logically, General Rodriguez reported during a brief communication window. They destroy our command centers, so they expect our forces to collapse. Instead, we promote new commanders from the ranks. They cut our supply lines, so they expect us to surrender. Instead, we find new ways to make weapons from whatever we have. The war that was supposed to last days stretched into weeks. The aliens were still winning, but victory was taking longer and costing more than they had ever imagined. Reports began coming in from across human space of alien ships withdrawing to regroup and reassess. They're not used to this, Dr. Sophie Bennett observed during a strategy meeting aboard the New Horizon. Every species they've conquered before either gave up immediately or was destroyed quickly. We're doing something they've never encountered. Before, what's that? Asked Admiral Carter. We're making them fight for every inch. We're forcing them to earn their victory. And every day we survive is another day they have to question whether their usual methods work against us. Jake looked at the reports from across human space. Everywhere the story was the same. Humans were losing, but they were losing slowly. They were being destroyed, but they were making the aliens work for every human life they took. How long can we keep this up? He asked. As long as it takes, Lisa replied. We may not be able to win this war, but we can make sure the aliens remember it forever. Neither of them knew that across the galaxy, other species were beginning to take notice. The hegemony's quick and easy conquest was taking months instead of days. Word was spreading that somewhere in the spiral arm, a young species had said no and meant it. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy was beginning to wonder if the hegemony was truly unstoppable. The final phase of the war began not with a battle, but with a message. Dr. Sophie Bennett had spent months perfecting her psychological warfare campaign, and now she was ready to deliver the killing blow to the hegemony's greatest weapon, the belief that resistance was impossible. Jake, I need to use every transmitter we have, Sophie said as she entered the command center of the New Horizon. Every human ship, every colony, every hidden relay station. I want this message to reach every corner of the galaxy. Captain Morrison looked at the datapad she handed him. The message was short, but he understood its power immediately. You sure about this? The Himini's empire is built on fear and the belief that they cannot be defeated. If we can break that belief, their entire system collapses. Admiral Carter's voice came through the communication system from her current location on the rebuilt Earth Defense Platform. All human forces, this is Admiral Carter. Dr. Bennett has developed a plan that could end this war. Not through military victory, but through something much more powerful. The plan was simple in concept but complex in execution. For over a year, humans had been making contact with hidden resistance groups throughout the galaxy. Now it was time to coordinate them, all into a single moment of defiance that would shatter the hegemony's image of invincibility. We're not trying to destroy their fleets, Sophie explained during the final briefing. We're trying to destroy their authority. Once other species see that the hegemony can be resisted successfully, their empire will tear itself apart. Lieutenant. Colonel Sarah Williams was now deep in hegemony space, coordinating with resistance groups on 17 different worlds. Her message came through with heavy encryption. All groups are in position. The Aldari are ready. The Keth are ready. Even some of the core worlds have resistance cells standing by. The broadcast began at exactly 0000 Universal Standard Time. From every human transmitter, from secret alien relay stations, from hidden resistance bases across the galaxy, the same message went out in thousands of languages. This is Dr. Sophie Bennett of Earth, speaking to every sentient being in the galaxy. You have been told that resistance is impossible. You have been told that the hegemony cannot be defeated. You have been told that submission is your only choice. These are lies. The message continued, carried by quantum relay systems that the hegemony had built to control their empire, but which were now being used against them. For 1 year, humanity has fought the hegemony and survived. We have lost many battles, but we have not lost the war. We have proved that the hegemony is not invincible. We have proved that freedom is possible. On worlds across the galaxy, beings who had lived their entire lives under hegemony rule heard words they had never imagined. Many had been genetically modified to suppress rebellion, but the modifications were not perfect. Deep inside, the spark of independence still existed. You do not have to kneel. You do not have to serve. You can choose to be free. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the hegemony. On the mining world of Altair 7, workers simply stopped working. On the manufacturing planet of Rigel 4, entire production lines shut down as the workers walked away from their stations. On the military world of Betelgeuse Prime, alien soldiers began laying down their weapons. High Executors Ronmech watched the reports come in with growing horror. Rebellions were breaking out faster than they could be suppressed. Loyal species were suddenly questioning orders they had followed for generations. The carefully maintained order of 10,000 years was crumbling in a matter of hours. Deploy the reserve fleets, Zrunmech ordered. Crush these rebellions immediately. But Speaker Kethvox had disturbing news. High Executor, many of our reserve fleets are reporting discipline problems. Some crews are refusing to fire on civilian populations. Others are simply deserting their posts. The psychological virus that humanity had unleashed was spreading through the hegemony's own forces. Aliens who had been bred for obedience were remembering what their ancestors had been like before the modifications. The genetic conditioning was breaking down under the weight of a simple idea. They had a choice. Admiral Carter coordinated the final phase of the plan from her position near Earth. All human forces, begin Operation Lighthouse. Let's show the galaxy what freedom looks like. Across human space, ships that had been hiding in the outer system suddenly appeared with their communications arrays broadcasting at full power. They were not attacking hegemony positions. Instead, they were providing coordination and communication. Support for the rebellions breaking out across the galaxy, the New Horizon, under Jake Morrison's command, took the most dangerous assignment. They jumped directly into the heart of hegemony space, to the capital world of Zenther Prime. Their mission was not to attack the planet, but to broadcast from the very center of the alien empire. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel. New Horizon broadcasting from Zenther Prime to every being who can hear this message. You are not alone. Across the galaxy, millions of your fellow sentients are choosing freedom. You can choose it too? The message was picked up and rebroadcast by resistance cells on dozens of worlds. What had started as a human rebellion was becoming a galaxy-wide revolution. On Earth, President Nathan Hayes delivered what would become known as the Freedom Address. Today, humanity stands not as conquerors but as liberators. We did not start this war, but we will finish it. Not through violence, but through the simple truth that every sentient being has the right to choose their own destiny. The hegemony's response was swift and brutal. They began destroying entire worlds that showed signs of rebellion. But for every world they destroyed, 10 more rose up in defiance. The empire that had been built on fear was discovering that fear could only control people who believed they had no choice. The turning point came when the Aldari openly declared their independence. These ancient beings who had hidden their true nature for 3,000 years suddenly revealed the full extent of their hidden civilization. They had not just preserved their culture in secret. They had been preparing for this moment for millennia. "We are the Aldari," their leader announced in a broadcast that reached every corner of the galaxy. "We were old when the hegemony was. Young, we remember freedom and we choose to be free again." The Aldari revelation triggered a cascade of similar declarations. Species after species threw off their genetic conditioning and remembered who they had been before the hegemony's modifications. The Empire was not just losing territory. It was losing the very foundation of its existence. High Executor's Renmek made one final attempt to restore order. He personally led a massive fleet to Earth, intending to destroy the source of the rebellion, once and for all. But when he arrived, he found something he had never seen before. The human solar system was protected not just by human ships, but by vessels from dozens of formerly loyal hegemony species. Aldari cruisers flew alongside human destroyers. Keth fighters provided cover for human transports. The galaxy had come to defend the world that had shown them freedom was possible. "This is High Executor's Renmek of the hegemony," came the transmission to Admiral Carter. "I demand to speak with your leadership." "This is Admiral Lisa Carter. I'm listening." "Your species has destroyed everything we built. 10,000 years of order and peace, shattered by your reckless defiance." Lisa's response was calm but firm. "We didn't destroy your order. We revealed it for what it really was, a prison, and we didn't give anyone freedom. We just reminded them that they already had it." The final confrontation was not a battle but a conversation. High Executor's Renmek, faced with the collapse of everything his species had built, demanded to understand how humanity had accomplished the impossible. "Your resistance should have ended within days," he said. "Your species lacks the military strength to oppose us. Your technology is primitive. Your numbers are insignificant, yet you have destroyed our empire. How?" Admiral Carter's answer was simple. "We never accepted that resistance was impossible. Every other species you conquered believed your lies about invincibility. We knew they were lies because we chose not to believe them. But the cost, the sacrifice. Your species has lost billions of lives for no strategic gain. We lost billions of lives for the most important strategic gain possible, the right to remain ourselves. And in the end, that was enough. The hegemony did not fall in a single battle or dramatic explosion. Instead, it simply dissolved as species after species chose independence over subjugation. Some hegemony forces continued to fight, but they were vastly outnumbered by the free peoples of the galaxy. Within a year of Sophie's broadcast, the 10,000-year empire had collapsed completely. In its place rose something the galaxy had never seen, a voluntary confederation of free worlds, each choosing its own path while cooperating with others as equals. The war officially ended when Executor Kethvox, the same being who had delivered the original ultimatum to humanity, requested permission to visit Earth. He came not as a conqueror but as a student trying to understand how a single word had brought down an empire. "We studied your species for months before making contact," he told Admiral Carter during their meeting. "We analyzed your technology, your military capabilities, your social structures, but we never understood the most important thing about you. What was that?" "You believe."